So at the meeting of the leaders of thought, they wanted Awolowo's forgiveness. By this time, Ojukwu in the eastern region had refused to recognize the authority of Gowon. Ojukwu seized federal assets in the east and confiscated federal revenue. He detained a civilian Nigerian airway flight that landed in Enugu. He refused to attend meetings of the Supreme Military Council. It was clear Nigeria was headed for a civil war. Did Awolowo react appropriately to Ojukwu's actions?
I think what he did, I'll put it in two ways. There were his thoughts and there were his actions. And I think the first was, of course, the West was in a very weak position. All the troops in the West were largely from the North. Because historically, the Westerners had always looked down on military. They've always thought it's only uneducated, lazy people that will join the army. So really, when you get to the army, then outside the medical corps and the education corps, you rarely find the Southwesterners. So all the barracks and military cantonments in the Southwest were peopled and officered by Northerners. Before the July event, perhaps there were some Easterners there that were in Abeokuta. Some of them in Ibadan. But when the return march happened, for their own safety, they ran. So the leadership of the army, Nigerian army in the West, were the arms of the Northerners.
Were all so the Igbos in Abeokuta, did they run away or some of them were also massacred?
Absolutely massacred. And the remaining had to run. They didn't run away. They ran in the interest of their life.
Why were they taken unawares? I keep thinking. They've dubbed the first coup an Igbo coup. And
the first one was never an Igbo coup.
It was not an Igbo coup?
It was a Nigerian coup.
Can you explain?
It's Ademoye, a Yoruba man. Is he an Igbo?
The author of this book?
Yes. Very, very intellectual.
It was not an Igbo coup?
It wasn't an Igbo coup. It was a coup of genuine Nigerians who were worried about Nigeria. Yes, they were young, generational. It was the generation that brought them together. It was their willingness to risk their life, to have a better Nigeria that brought them together. It wasn't to put an Igbo man or create an Igbo empire. No. Igbo himself is Midwest Igbo. In normal parlance, he is not an original Igbo. So he wasn't doing all of that.
Ifajuna was Igbo.
Yeah, was Igbo.
Onwatuegu Igbo.
Yes.
Most of the officers were Igbo officers.
What joined them together was intellect, intellectual revolt. We wanted better Nigeria. Most of them were educated. They were university graduates.
Most of the army officers, senior army officers killed were from the north. The premier of the western region was killed. The premier of the northern region was killed. Michael Okpara was not killed.
That was a failure of individual operators.
Tell me more.
In planning the coup, they broke Nigeria into territories, and each person had roles he had to play. Nzegu was in charge of the north. When he moved, he sought even the support of Ojukwu, who never gave him support.
But Ojukwu knew about the coup?
Not before. He was not party to the planning of the coup. from everything I've read. But of course, for you to take over government, don't forget Igbo was just a trainee officer, and he was using trainees. And Ojukwu was the commander in Kano, so he needed him. He reached out to him and he didn't give him support. So if it was an original Igbo coup, of course, Ojukwu would give him support and he would have taken over, because they have the largest collection of military in the north. But he didn't. In the west, of course, it's succeeded because the environment was against Akintola himself. So it was easy. And of course, because he reacted in a different way, he decided to fight. He decided to shoot. No other person did that. He was the only one. And of course,
when you say he decided to shoot, how?
When they captured his deputy. The military boys can be something else. They captured his deputy. So it was the deputy that led them to his house. It was he who spoke to him. He didn't know the military was. There would be a military movement. When he now discovered that Fanika had military boys waiting, he also had prepared for such days, not of military, but of civilian. He thought the operation went people would probably come to his house one day. So he took his submachine gun and opened fire.
You know, mind you, he had been warned of a coup.
Yes, which was why a day before the coup, he flew to the north to discuss it with Sardauna. And Sardauna said it was impossible.
That it was impossible.
Because he was sure of the northern command. And he was sure of the loyalty of Agui Ironsi. And Agui Ironsi had no reason not to be loyal to them. It was not to be the GOC. It was not recommended by the military. The outgoing General Everard or what? Never recommended him.
Did he recommend Babafemi Ogundipe?
He didn't either. I think he recommended Malamari. But Balewa and Sardauna opted for Ironsi. They said, let's keep seniority. So why would Ironsi want to fight them? No reason. Absolutely none. So he had no reason to be part of conspiracy.
They didn't see Nzogu coming.
Nobody. And that's what happens to politicians.
But there was movement of troops in Kaduna. It was clear.
It was just for training. And he does that regularly. Even from evidences, those troops didn't know what they were doing until they got to points of action. They thought he would carry them, he would train them, but it was a revolutionary. And they are always in the midst of decadence, some revolutionary. In the midst of darkness, there will be one source of light.
Wasn't he too brutal? Wasn't he too brutal? The way Ahmadu Bello was murdered. Wasn't Zogu not too brutal?
When you look at it today, you would think so. But that time, a failure at that point was the end. And you know, he's a military man, a young man, well trained. He went to Sandhurst. Sandhurst was the best training center in the British Commonwealth. He knew that if he failed, it's death. So it's either you die or you kill. And he knew if he was unable to penetrate the Sardauna hegemony, that was the end of the coup. And he believed that the feudalism they were talking about, you know, any Marxist, And there are many in the South there. Any radical, you criticize the feudalism in the North. And he was seen as the epitome, was the Sadowna, next in rank to the Sultan. So he wasn't just a premier. He also had religious control. So for him not to fail, you don't operate like how would I call it, a shooter. You do what you call a spray shooting. I must kill this one, because if I don't, that will be the end of the exercise. And he was the leader. So he assigned to himself the most difficult assignment. So if he failed, everything.
The guys in
But
the
looking
east,
backward now, it will look brutal.
because he took Ahmadu Bello's wife along.
They took Sode and his wife along too.
The guys in the east did not execute theirs.
Now let us look at the truth of the circumstances. They've just had a Commonwealth meeting in Lagos. And all of them have been going away. And most of them were aware there would be a coup, because they had better intelligence through their embassies. But we still had Archbishop Macarius around, who was visiting the East, as at the day of the action. You have to look at the international dimension to it. You attack Okpara with Macarius. So that was a possibility. I'm doing my own analysis now.
Yes.
And in this matter, we have to be objective analysts. Will he kill Archbishop Macarius alone? So he had to stay hand for Macarius to leave. But coup had already started. And because it was Ifeanyi that had responsibility for that, a lot of people now interpret it. And they may be right. But from the way I look at the international dimension to it, it may just be, let's wait until Macarius will leave. Action had happened in the North. It had happened in the West. There was no need for the Midwest, because there was a new state, a new region, and there was no environmental hostility to the incumbent government the way it was. And Dennis Osadebe, who was there, in the political calculation, was not a significant element. So it is possible that sheer incompetence of Ifeanyi or ethnic sentiment or international political sentiment, either of those three could have interfered with him.
But was there any reason to take out Okpara? The environment was friendly to Okpara at the time.
Actually, I don't believe it could have been part of the original plan. I wasn't part of it. I'm able to read it. If those coup planners thought that the man to lead Nigeria was Awolowo, and his political partner is Okpara, why would they want to kill him? Let's look at it objectively. Part of the causes of the coup was the 1964 federal election. Action Group, NCNC formed OPGA. In the absence of Awolowo, they had a joint leadership, as it were. Okpara and the wife of Awolowo. And they campaigned together all over Nigeria. So when you look at it analytically, it will have been strange if people thought that this rubbish, and they thought this rubbish was based on feudalism. There was no feudalism in this. They thought there were partners and collaborators with feudalists in the West. They eliminated them. They thought there were also collaborators in Lagos. That has to do with Okutiebo Balewa, they eliminated them. So what would be the reason for dealing with the co-leader of what they saw as the only hope for Nigeria?
Azikiwe left the country before the coup.
If Azikiwe had been in the country, they will eliminate him.
You think so?
I believe so.
Why did he leave? Did he have premonition of the coup?
He probably did, and because that is him. I believe that Azikiwe will always look for safe ground. He did that 1951-52. You had to have a lecture, a very radical lecture against the British government. You know how to plan the lecture. It was still an NCNCA there. It was not a national group. Every young man loved Azikiwe. They loved his intellect. They loved his grandiloquence. And they followed him. But came lecture time. Azikiwe has disappeared, as usual.
Why?
I think there's some cowardice in him.
Some cowardice.
I think so.
So the point you make is that it wasn't an Igbo coup.
I'm clearing my mind in that.
We are discussing history. And another book I'm recommending to you to have a better understanding of the discourse and form your own opinion is this book, Ironsi, Nigeria, the Army, Power and Politics, written by Chuks Iluebunam. This book is a classical work on the story we are discussing. I did not bring the book Nzogu, written by Obasanjo. That is another classic you should read. So you can get this book on udarabooks.com. And you can also buy it on WhatsApp. The numbers are pinned to this broadcast. We are looking at history, politics, and power. I have recommended Why We Struck by Adewale Ademoyiga. Now I am recommending Ironsi, Nigeria, the Army, Power, and Politics. It's about learning and unlearning. We are talking about Awolowo in the Nigerian Civil War. And when you talk about the war, one name that must come up is Ojukwu. So look at this book, Emeka, written by Frederick Forsyth. Emeka is a classical work if you want to know more about Colonel Chukwuemeka Odumegwu Ojukwu. You can get this book on udarabooks.com. I am discussing with Dr. Yemi Farounbi, looking at the background to the war